Greetings all, it's Chuke here from Chuke's Outdoor Adventures. Well, this summer has been the summer that just keeps on giving when it comes to bear attack and Kodiak brown bear defense stories. Another amazing one. Big shout out to my buddy Bad Element Labs. I met him through Instagram. He moved up here to Alaska. He does these custom AK magazine jobs with windows in them. Really cool guy, but he's obsessed with these stories like me, and he sent me a bunch of them, and this one just blew me away. This is from Free Range American. So look this story up, and it's titled "Man Kills Kodiak Bear Inside Neighbor's House with a 12 gauge." Now, if you've watched any of my videos, I've always said 12 gauge is king. I prefer a pump action, either a Mossberg 500 or a Remington 870. This is my Mossberg 500 that I just had a blast building. I've got the Magpul forend here. It's got a side saddle. It's got an optic. It's got a fiber optic front sight. I put this guard on top here. I had to bend it in order to put the Magpul forend on there. It started off with a pistol grip. I prefer shouldering something. A lot of times something like this will be really heavy. So if you're going on an extended hike, you might want something like Beans Baxter had in camp. He had sort of a really shortened shockwave type 12 gauge. I do have a light on there, which can be really important, and we'll talk about that. But I use Brennecke Black Magic slugs. That's what Fish and Game here in Alaska suggests. 12 gauge slug is king against brown bears. I had a buddy lived around Dillingham, Alaska, and someone from the local town government called him up and said, "Hey, there's a brown bear in town. I want you to take him out." So he got the go ahead. He took a 12 gauge with slugs, and he was not being charged or anything. He just came up to the brown bear, shot it in the side, and it fell over. One shot with a 12 gauge slug. I like to think of the 12 gauge slug, lead slug, as like what a hot 40 cal bullet would do to a human. You know, a 40 cal hard cast would do to a human up close. That's what it does to bears. It just works better than anything else, I feel. That's why on all my lists, it always comes out as #1. Now, this story was one of the best stories I have read in a while. I could not believe it. So the guy who killed the bear is retired Coast Guardsman Chris Heilman. He loves Alaska. He lives out there in this small community, which is 10 miles southwest of Kodiak proper. So I've been to Kodiak a bunch of times. I interviewed Cy out at his sporting goods shop. I hope he's still around. That guy was so cool. But this community is called Bell's Flats. And they just have a group of houses, one restaurant, a little store, and that's it, he said. And so the homeowner, it was his neighbor a few houses down, Aaron Olson. He had 5 of his little kids home at the time. There was a storm, so set the mood. There's a raging storm. In Kodiak, they get these big rainstorms in the winter, a lot of ice and rain and blowing wind. Sometimes the airplanes cannot land. So around 11 p.m., this bear wandered into the house. Now, they mention in this article, people don't realize this, in Kodiak, if you've got a brisket on the smoker and then you just roll it into your garage, a bear is going to pound his way into that area. I mean, it's no joke. Kodiak brown bears are the biggest brown bears in the world, arguably, and they're just really dangerous. When you're out hunting on Kodiak Island, the hunters will tell you that if you shoot a deer, it's like ringing the dinner bell for the Kodiak brown bears. They'll just start running at you because they know they can take that deer from a hunter, which happens pretty frequently. And they will tell you that if you just bring bear spray alone in Kodiak with those massive brown bears the size of a car, those bears will just laugh at you. People use poppers there and carry big firearms and shotguns. Now, the homeowner had a Taurus Judge 5-shot revolver. It was a regular Judge loaded with .45 Colt. I wish it would have said if it was hard cast or what. Now, he did, this bear came into their house. It was terrifying. He got several shots into the bear with his .45 Colt. and he did wound it, but he does admit, you know, this is not a round suitable to take out a big bear. I would argue that if he would have had the raging judge from Taurus with the, you know, plus P hard cast loads that I tested, this story might have turned out differently, but it's still, you know, nothing compared to the 12 gauge Slug. So he was pulling the trigger while shouting, "Get out of my house." And a 45 Colt is not designed to bring down a 988-pound bear instantly. It's not big enough, he said. You need a bigger gun. So he got several shots into it, wounded it, scared and injured. The bear tried to escape his house. It is staggered into the home's Arctic entry. So instead of porches in Alaska, a lot of our homes have these Arctic entries, which is like a little entryway where you take your boots off before you enter the main house. But he couldn't get out. He was thrashing around in there. Luckily, Hillman heard the shots, and he had, you know, was, oh, something's going down. He figured it was a bear. His wife called 911. Now, what is cool about this story is he had tactical experience. He grabbed his Remington 870 tactical, very cool shotgun, and he had talked about experience breaching houses and being on a tactical team. So very lucky that this guy was on the scene and not just somebody that's just going to blast away with a shotgun. You got to, you know, have training with that kind of thing. So he showed up and he could see the bear right behind the front door through the glass. There was a glass door. It was moving up and down, its head up and down, like it was licking its wounds or eating something. He wasn't sure which, probably licking his wounds. So like I said, he was on a tactical law enforcement team, and he was ready because he had slugs in this 12 gauge. So, and he talked about being a breacher before, and it wasn't much different than that. He was terrified of, you know, he knew his neighbor had kids. He was terrified of hitting somebody. So he could see the bear. So he fired just feet from the bear's head. He was just, I don't know, a few feet from it, super close. The copper slug hit the mark, traveling under the bear's jaw and through into his brain. After I shot, we moved to the door, shined a flashlight in there. We could see it laying there motionless, but we wanted to give it plenty of time. The last thing I wanted to do was go in the back door and be in the living room with an injured bear. That's why I made a choice to shoot it right through the door instead of going in there with it. You know, they confirmed it was dead. Removing a half-ton Kodiak Bear from a pantry is no feat. You know, obviously law enforcement, Fish and Game showed up. The bear's carcass belonged to the state because it was killed in defense of life and property. Just an amazing story. So the bear he shot through Olson's front door weighed 988 pounds, had a 27-inch skull. That is just, for perspective, a 28-inch skull is a record, and they showed that. So just about 1,000-pound bear, and a 12 gauge with slugs took it out. So kudos to Mr. Hellman. I think that this is one of the greatest stories I've ever heard. Truly a hero. And like I said, 12 gauge is king. I'm a big fan of hunting rifles, 45-70 for bear defense, but at close range, and this proved it. That was just a few feet away, right in the jaw, up into the brain, a 12 gauge copper slug even. Pretty interesting. I had thought it had been a lead slug, but I prefer lead, but that is just an amazing story. I can only imagine the foot-pounds of energy of that firearm. So really cool story. Check out this article on Free Range American. Very cool story, and kudos. I'm glad everyone survived and they were able to take out a massive Kodiak Bear that broke into this house. So thanks for tuning in. I'll have more videos out. It's Chuke, your friend in the field.
My name is Chuke. I like to trade my guns just for fun, but now I have none. Oh, look, get shot by a bear, but I don't care. I got a 10mm. Chuke's Outdoor Adventures. Watch you all die every time.